Construction on Taliesin began in 1911. Frank Lloyd Wright had already had at least a dozen commissions completed under his own name. And I'm not sure if that includes, I guess that could include the bootleg houses, as well as like the home and studio and maybe some other houses in Oak Park. So as we mentioned about the prairie style, this was all truly original architecture. No one in the States had seen these styles before. And Frank Lloyd Wright did not call himself a modernist, and he didn't call himself a classicist. He really just didn't want to be associated with any architectural movement at all.
That he didn't create. No.
Yeah, I kind of. However, he did design many significant 20th century buildings that we, as historians or scholars, do associate with the modern movement, including the Guggenheim and the Johnson Wax building in Racine, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So Wright's designs as an independent practitioner, so this is after Sullivan, after being an apprentice, they're all from one kind of umbrella philosophy known as organic architecture. And its principles are really an extension of Louis Sullivan and his slogan, who was form follows function. But Frank Lloyd Wright took that. So form follows function was really the mantra of modern architecture. So everything was like pared down. If it's detail, if it doesn't contribute in any way to your structure and you don't need it, you get rid of it. So Wright changed this phrase slightly to say form and function are one. And he incorporated the word organic into his philosophy as early as 1908. So that even predated Taliesin, which was a very early expression of organic architecture. So the form and function are one. It means that nature was how they were integrated in the prairie styles. So you have these structures that seem to grow out of the earth. You know, they're low and long and very horizontal rather than vertical. You have the wide overhangs, and it's very, I don't know, it really uses, it's very contextual. It's not as sculptural. It's elegant and not showy and practical. And it's a way to kind of make spaces into a whole, which I guess I kind of read that off on the Chicago Architecture Foundation website with the idea of prairie style is like large spaces that connect, few hallways, just very functional designs. So there's a kind of connection between the site and the structure and the context. So there's a book called Frank Lloyd Wright, Between Principle and Form, that really puts it very succinctly. And they say organic architecture is the concept that buildings must develop naturally out of their environment, reflect their central purpose, and use building materials best suited to those two factors. So you're kind of getting rid of the excess, and it's just a very pure expression of design. The natural influence was very important, and especially somewhere like the rolling hills of Wisconsin, where Taliesin was built. It was placed below the crest of the hill, not on top of it. And it was constructed of limestone walls with stucco balconies and shingled roofs. And it was conceived as a compound and surrounded on three sides by buildings. But the focus of the space and the symbolic center was the hilltop rather than the house. The fourth side, or maybe the fourth wall, like theater, I'm not really sure, but it's closed off in the distance by the highest hill in the valley. So successful siting is important really anywhere to make a building really work. But Wright noted that the Taliesin house was of the hill, rather than on the hill. So Frank Lloyd Wright, being either a self-proclaimed genius or believed by architectural history scholars to be a genius, that he actually was able to violate his own principle, the whole not on, where he felt like it.
Because all the rules do not apply to him.
Right. They don't, because there's definitely other places that are on the top of the hill. Like there's a Usonian house in Pennsylvania close to Falling Water called Kentuck Knob, and it's definitely on the top of a hill. Although I guess there's some topography that goes up, but Kentuck Knob is for sure on this knob or knoll, and like you have this, I guess, 270 degree view, because the other quadrant is like where you come in the sort of circular drive. Anyhow, that is another later installation of Frank Lloyd Wright design that it's also very cool. But so back to Taliesin, it is on the brow, which of course is not the dome of the hill where it's sited. So the process of Taliesin's design and construction was kind of a rebirth for him based on the scandal that we just mentioned, with him going off to Europe with a mistress and doing, I don't know, inappropriate things with a woman that wasn't his wife.
Yes.
So, he escaped, he came back, he built this house for her, for Mama. And after being in Europe and Italy specifically, the Wisconsin countryside apparently reminded him of Tuscany, and he used the Tuscan villas that he saw there as a precedent for the design of Taliesin. And he envisioned Taliesin to be, quote, a complete living unit from pig to proprietor. So Taliesin was more than a house. It was a property for living, working, teaching, learning, and farming.
So kind of like a little...
It's a commune.
Yeah, a commune, sure. Right.
Yeah. The property contains structures representing nearly each decade of Wright's career, which is also interesting. So while it was built in 1911, it kept sort of being added onto. There was a family chapel, a school, a windmill, barns, and a home for Frank Lloyd Wright's sister. Taliesin is the only structure.
Oh, so we did have a sister.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you said only child.
Yeah.
Weird.
Okay.
Yep.
Now I have to look it up.
Yeah, you do. Please do. So Taliesin, like the house Taliesin, is the only structure on the property that has multiple reincarnations, and we will get to that as part of our story. And the third and final iteration from the 20s is the one that you see today when you tour, and the one that I will be describing. But Caroline will get into why there were three. It honors the surrounding hills, with low pitch roofs, matching the angles of the adjacent topography, which I think is pretty cool. So he was just acutely aware of what was going on, not just immediately, not just the immediate site, but also the country, the surrounding country. And he uses the angles that he sees to create elements of the house. The stone used in the foundation, in the terraces, the chimneys, the fireplaces, and walls was quarried from a mile away. So also using local materials helps with that sort of site and building connection. The hearth was always central to Wright's designs, but it was first at Taliesin that stone was used instead of brick, because the inglenook, the inglenook is that little like area by a fireplace where you kind of sit and read and chill out. But the home and studio, and I guess other houses in Oak Park, use that long horizontal brick. And at Taliesin, they used stone in the fireplace instead. To express the idea that the house was truly of the hill, he instructed his masons to lay the interior stone to resemble the layered bed from which it came. So I guess it was looks like it was sedimentary, or that it was just quarried, or the stone was just still there, instead of taking it and making it look, stacked like we see in a mid-century house.
Oh crap, he had a bunch of siblings.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Well, was it just not with his dad, the minister, and his mom?
No, seems like...
So they had one at the time that was he just the oldest? Anyway, Caroline's going to keep looking up exactly how many siblings Frank Lloyd Wright had.
He was the oldest.
But,
Oh. One of his sisters was an American children's book illustrator and graphic artist.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder if that was the sister.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that was the one that he built the house for at Taliesin. All right, so back to the architecture a little bit. Each iteration of Taliesin was reflective of the hands responsible for its construction. I thought this was kind of interesting. So he used local immigrants who were Irish and Norwegian and Italian. He kind of used them over and over because he trusted them and their work, and they were the ones that built Taliesin 1 and 2. But 3 was assembled by the apprentices who were there as part of the studio, and they were kind of learning by doing and they were using the local stone, cypress, and plaster. So they were like very hands-on. Unlike many of Wright's other houses, Taliesin is beholden to no access grid or otherwise, much like the irregular geography of its surroundings. So, of course, in Chicago, you're on a grid. I guess Oak Park is a suburb, but it's still, laid out in regular intervals and blocks. And Taliesin, just being on a hill in the countryside of Wisconsin, is not part of any sort of grid. Taliesin has 5 wings. The largest contains the living quarters. There is a studio wing, a hill wing, and 2 other wings that run parallel. All told, it comprises 37,000 square feet. This is kind of an unbelievable number if you've visited any of his houses in Oak Park and Falling Water, and certainly his Usonian homes, because those are like maybe 2,000 square feet. So sprawling's not really an adjective I would use to describe a Wright building, but I guess this one was much different. They're practical and not compact, but each space is as big as it needs to be for its function, and for sure thoughtfully designed and connected to the next space. So there's just a lot going on in Taliesin. The entrance to the house, this is a kind of a common detail for Frank Lloyd Wright's designs, is not where you would expect it to be. And once you locate it, it's under a low roof, and there's an interior path that you would take to reach the kind of surprise, like this beautiful soaring space inside. So you have to kind of go through a tunnel to reach, this grand,
interesting,
this light space. And so you come upon the 28 by 36 foot space, which within itself has several areas that you occupy, including an ingle nook and a dining alcove. So the space is complemented with Wright designed furniture and art, and his also famous and beautiful and functional built-in cabinets. One of the most private spaces in the house, which was Frank Lloyd Wright's bedroom, is the opposite of soaring. And he reduced the ceiling height in some places to under 6 feet, which is typical for him, since he was 5'8" and he tended to like designing low ceilings. The intention here is to not only make you feel more like Frank Lloyd Wright's height, but to direct your view outward towards a southern vista and the lake that Wright himself had created. There's a phrase that I came upon in the book Wright for Wright that talks about Wright's use of the landscape, or rather his, I guess, manipulation is one word for it. But they call it calculated management, and I think that's a really appropriate way to put it. So based on everything I've read and seen about Taliesin and know about other Frank Lloyd Wright properties I've toured both in Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Chicago, I can tell that there are many reasons that I definitely want to visit Taliesin someday and be able to compare a countryside